art can be a continuation of a dialogue instead of something that concludes itself within itself. The moment of self-reflection and stillness within oneself.
This is our second exhibition of Liu Ye. Exhibitions by him are extremely rare. You can see that and understand once you see these works, what went into them. It's a jolt, actually, when you see the work in person. So we are so grateful to be able to host this exhibition and to work with such an absolutely brilliant artist. An added bonus is we are joined by Luca Guadagnino, brilliant filmmaker, film producer, designer, and actually connoisseur of painting. That's how we met.
Naive.
And naive, but sentimental as well, as we all are. Everyone here, I'm sure, knows Luca's work. He's made some absolutely iconic films that are part of people's consciousness. I Am Love, 2009. The Bigger Splash, 2015. Call Me By Your Name, which is a masterpiece, 2017. And more recently, he's completed a film with Zendaya called Challengers, which was meant to have opened the Venice Film Festival. Due to the strike, it will be released in April of next year. And then this summer, actually, he's in post-production on an adaptation of William Burroughs' Queer with Daniel Craig, the giant. One of the most ambitious films, production-wise,
Absolutely.
shot at Cinecittà. Luca and I were having dinner in Rome with my daughter Lydia last June, and I was tempting him with images of Liu Ye's work. He was familiar with the work. And when Liu Ye told me what the title of the exhibition was, Naive and Sentimental Painting, which is a reference to a composer, I sent a message to Luca, and I got a response within 3 seconds. And absolutely, you have no idea what that means to me. So maybe we begin there.
Thank you, David. Thank you for being here. That's true. When I started to see a sort of anteprima of these amazing paintings, I was already riveted by them. But the connection with John Adams' naive and sentimental music wrapped everything in an incredible way. Liu Ye and we share a very profound love for this amazing American composer, John Adams. And in a strange way, we both met him later in our life, and probably it changed some of the parameters through which we get inspiration from music, or how we see the experience of listening to music as a strong influence to our own work. This specific symphony, Naive and Sentimental Music, it's the soundscape that I was looking for my movie I Am Love. And I conceived the movie consistently for the following 3 years through that music, through that score, Naive and Sentimental Music. The title is, as in John Adams, and I would say also as in Liu Ye, a very ironic but also very affected reference to the Schiller concept of naive and sentimental poetry. Schiller divided the idea of art in two possibilities. One is the naive approach, which is the idea of art for the sake of itself, and sentimental art as a canon that can be projected in the arrow of time and history. And the way in which in this exhibition of Liu Ye we can feel and we can resonate with the source of John Adams' naive and sentimental music is that I think that the way in which Ye is constantly reflecting on his position as an artist toward the legacy of art that preceded him and that is guiding him in order to compose these impeccably formalistic, fantastic paintings, and to reflect through these on themes that are very connected to his own research through decades. It's what I feel it's...
I think that's the generosity in the work, in that the viewer kind of completes the work. It's really art about art. It's not art after reality. He's not afraid to show you his sources, whether it's Antonello da Messina, you'll see upstairs references to early Renaissance painting, Netherlandish painting. But then there's also Balthus and Mondrian and references to classical modernism.
Or
Arnett Newman.
the reference
Film.
to cinema or literature.
Or literature, with these portraits of Borges. It's a constant source of calibration, and it's sort of the art of translation. If you remove one element, like in a Mondrian painting, it loses its structure. And that's what's so brilliant, I think, about his work.
And I think what is important to be underlined is that from the inheritance that he gets from artists like Mondrian, he can continue that dialogue with us. And for him, it's very important that art can be a progress, and there can be a continuation of a dialogue instead of something that concludes itself within itself. In a way, it's the opposite of cynicism, I would say, the work of Ye.
Everyone knows this wonderful Oscar Wilde quote. Every portrait that is painted with feeling is a portrait of the artist, not of the sitter. The sitter is merely the accident, the occasion. It is not he who is revealed by the painter, it is rather the painter who on colored canvas reveals himself. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that is, in a way, the hurdle that we face every day when we create something, or that we should be as open as possible to deal with. And it's true that a movie that I do, eventually I understand afterwards that speaks about myself. It's everything here. It's a sort of meditation on himself for Ye.
In the end.
In fact, that what it's very unifying. It's a beautiful sense of melancholy that is crossing this exhibition strongly. But this melancholy doesn't come just from the subject in itself, but the way in which the actual composition of the painting and the representation of the subject against the background create this friction, I would say. This painting, we were talking with Ye about how he got to master the background.
The blue is a kind of reference to what's called Holbein blue. And these paintings, when you look at them closely, you see they're very heavily painted. He's constantly revising. And that background was black at one point, and suddenly the eyes pop, and you see Borges's blue eyes in that Holbein blue, which is a clear reference. The exhibition is almost of a piece.
Yes.
And what's uncanny is the artist designed this exhibition, actually not having been to London in 23 years. And the relationships, it's a little crowded in the gallery at the moment, but the relationships between the paintings is so carefully calibrated that it's like of a piece. There are a number of references to Maggie Cheung, the iconic actress.
And to characters that she played in a couple of movies by Wong Kar-wai. I think Days of Being Wild.
Days of Being Wild.
And In the Mood for Love. You know, I remember a quote from the great Italian director Bernardo Bertolucci. He tells you that the great performance should be a documentary about the actors playing the characters in the movie. And I think what it's astonishing in these portraits is how much Ye can capture the essence of both the characters created by Wong Kar-wai and Maggie Cheung, and also, in a way, a sort of ghostly essence of Maggie Cheung herself, but together, not separated. And this is not a realistic portraiture of a person sitting in front of the painter, but it's a meditation on that moment that struck the painter by seeing a performance in a movie by another artist.
Right. It's really a painting of a film still from a film of an actress playing a part.
Yes.
And those layers are all in the work.
And in the two portraits that are on this side of the room over there, you could see, we discussed that yesterday, two almost similar portraits of a character on Days of Being Wild, but one is as if it's like freezing a moment in the movie, and the other one is just the moment after the performance has been given by the actress. And you could see how he plays with color and how he plays with pigmentation to achieve that. So we go back to the formality of the painting and the reference of the structure in the painting itself. Do we want to go upstairs?
Should we go upstairs? So there's a little bit of a break in the exhibition on the second floor. When you walk through, you sort of see what unites everything here is sort of daily life. Now, Ye was in Beijing the last 3 years, locked down, and he basically paints what was around him, what he really loves, like his pantheon of subjects downstairs, his dog Phoebe. And you have an image sort of as an homage to Antonella Damascena as you walk in, Phoebe as a puppy, and then Now. So this is a perfect expression of the idea of frenemies.
Yes.
Between these two.
Absolutely. But it's also a perfect example of how the concept of naive and sentimental painting expresses itself. He starts from element of daily life. We could also think of what meant that daily life under lockdown, and he expands it by going back in his mind to the elements of art that made him and reshuffle them. Like the reference of Phoebe as a puppy to Antonello Damascena is astonishing, and it's not a quote. It's like a conversation with Antonello Damascena in order to continue that legacy many centuries later, and yet with the same profundity. These two paintings, we had a very lovely conversation with him yesterday, because first of all, the proportion, they're almost natural scale, right?
One to one.
Not completely, because when you put them in the space of the canvas, probably
they feel a little bigger.
You have to adapt it in order to make it proper. But the concept of these two paintings mostly is about the color of the background and how gold plays in relationship to the painting itself, and how gold is a color that could become suddenly, let's say, overreaching.
Kitsch.
And kitsch, and how to play with it without going in that direction. So he told us a funny story that when he got Now, the breeder who gave Now gave the cat, claiming that there was a lot of gold in the fur of the cat. And actually, Ye doesn't believe that. And in fact, he thinks that in Phoebe there is the gold that he had to create a background for Now. And when he created this painting, he started with gold again, but in order to compensate with the gilded animal, he had to change that gold and go into this yellow that he told us.
He actually, it was a moment where he thought about Van Gogh's sunflowers, and it's kind of a sunflower yellow. I who think about food a lot, and you being Italian, I see it as a Zabaione yellow.
Yes.
But what's also amazing about these paintings is this sort of frozen, arrested movement that is just frozen. And if you have the suggestion of motion with the balls, the curled tail is people who have animals, they know that is a big communicator of the mood of the animal. And you have that actually in all of these portraits. We were walking, I was with Ye at the National Gallery, and this idea of classicism in portraiture, the figures have no expression. He's searching for that kind of total sense of introspectiveness, this kind of inwardness and frozen moment. You reference melancholy, which I think is
I
there
think
too.
melancholy is the thread of this beautiful exhibition. In a way, there is melancholy as the moment of self-reflection and stillness within oneself. And this is something that can be traced throughout all the paintings, including the beautiful balls
Including the
over
balls there. Exactly.
And this also leads us probably to a conclusion, which is that Liu Ye plays with references, cultural icons, cultural significance that are important for him in a way that avoids the idea of quoting
or postmodernism.
or what postmodernism has become, and actually goes very boldly into classicism in a very touching way.
New way.
A new way. Yes.